What happens when a beloved Hollywood actor walks onto one of daytime television's most opinionated panels expecting a routine conversation, only for the interview to slowly unravel into one of the most uncomfortable exchanges the audience has seen in months? That's exactly what viewers felt the moment Zac Efron sat down across from Joy Behar during a tense episode of The View. What started as light promotion for his latest project quickly shifted into sharp disagreements, awkward interruptions, and a moment that had the audience completely divided by the end of the segment. Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience applauded loudly as Zac walked onto the stage smiling, waving politely toward the crowd while the hosts greeted him at the table. He looked relaxed at first. Dark jacket, casual shirt, confident but calm energy. The kind of appearance celebrities make dozens of times during promotional tours. The hosts welcomed him warmly, though there was already a slightly different tone at the table compared to some of the lighter interviews earlier in the episode. "Everybody's talking about your new film," Joy said while glancing at her cards. "And apparently everybody online thinks you've reinvented yourself again." The audience clapped. Zac smiled politely. "I don't know about reinvented. I think I'm just trying to keep challenging myself." "Well," Joy replied, leaning back slightly, "some people would say you've spent a long time trying to escape being the pretty boy from Disney." A few audience members laughed awkwardly. Zac chuckled softly. I think every actor wants to grow. That's normal." Sunny jumped in quickly to soften the moment. "And you have. You've done drama, comedy, serious biographical work." "Sure," Joy interrupted. "But let's be honest, there are actors who transition naturally, and there are actors who spend years convincing people they're serious." The audience reacted with a louder mix of laughter and murmurs. Zac's smile tightened slightly. Whoopi immediately sensed the tension. "Joy is starting early today." The crowd laughed harder at that. "No, I'm asking a real question," Joy continued. "Because audiences still associate you with High School Musical. That follows people." Zac nodded carefully. "And I'm grateful for that. Honestly, that project changed my life." "But does it bother you?" Joy asked. "Not really. You're saying that now," she replied quickly. "But every actor hates being boxed in." Zac paused for a second before answering. "I think there's a difference between being boxed in and being remembered for something people loved." The audience applauded softly. Joy looked unconvinced. "That sounds media-trained." A louder reaction came from the audience that time. Even the other hosts shifted slightly in their seats. Zac laughed quietly, though it looked more uncomfortable than amused. I'm just being honest." "Come on," Joy said. "You're telling me you enjoy every interviewer bringing up teenage musicals when you're trying to do serious acting?" "I think people connect to things emotionally," Zac answered. "I'd rather people remember work they cared about than forget me entirely." The crowd applauded again, louder this time. Joy smiled thinly. "That's a very polished answer." Whoopi leaned in. "Joy likes Messier answers." The audience laughed. "Well, because polished answers are boring television," Joy fired back. At that point the energy shifted. It still sounded playful on the surface, but viewers could feel the edge underneath it now. Zac crossed his hands together on the table. "I don't think being respectful means somebody's boring." The audience immediately reacted with an audible, "Oh." Joy raised her eyebrows. "I didn't say disrespectful." "No," Zac replied calmly. "But sometimes interviews become less about conversation and more about trying to get somebody to say something dramatic." A louder reaction spread through the audience. Sunny leaned back slightly like she knew things were escalating. Joy gave a quick laugh. "Well, you are on television. And I'm happy to have conversations," Zac answered. "Real conversations." There was a brief silence. Whoopi stepped in. "Okay, let's talk about the movie before this becomes a pay-per-view event." The audience burst into laughter. For a moment things settled again. A clip from Zac's upcoming project played on the studio screens. The audience applauded afterward, and the conversation shifted toward the physical preparation he had gone through for the role. Alyssa asked him about training and diet changes. Zac explained how exhausting the preparation had been and how he'd become more focused on balancing health and work instead of obsessing over appearance. "That's actually something I learned the hard way," he admitted. "There was a period where I cared too much about looking perfect." Joy jumped in immediately. "Well, Hollywood rewards that." "It can," Zac said carefully. "And social media definitely rewards it," Joy added. "Young people are obsessed with appearance now." Some audience members clapped. But I also think social media punishes people unfairly, Zac replied. Especially younger actors. Joy looked at him. You mean criticism? I mean unrealistic expectations. Comes with fame. The tone became sharper again. Zac stayed calm. Sure, but it doesn't make it healthy. Joy shrugged slightly. Nobody forced celebrities to become celebrities. A few audience members clapped while others stayed silent. Whoopi looked toward Joy for a second, almost warning her silently to ease up. But Joy continued. I'm serious. I always find it interesting when famous people complain about fame after benefiting from it. Zac leaned back slightly before responding. I don't think talking honestly about pressure is complaining. But there's pressure in every job, Joy replied immediately. Absolutely, Zac answered. But not every mistake becomes global entertainment overnight. The audience applauded loudly at that line. Joy smiled, but it looked more defensive now. You actors always think your lives are uniquely difficult. And sometimes television hosts think empathy only applies to certain people, Zac responded calmly. The audience exploded with reactions. Several people clapped loudly while others gasped. Whoopi immediately leaned back with a surprised expression. Okay, Sunny covered her, mouth trying not to laugh. Joy stared at Zac for a second. Oh, so now I'm not empathetic? I didn't say that, Zac replied evenly. I said sometimes conversations online and on TV become very dismissive when celebrities talk about mental health or pressure. Joy folded her arms. Because sometimes it sounds performative. And sometimes criticism becomes performative too, Zac answered. The audience got louder again. Whoopi tried to regain control. This is why live television keeps people employed. The crowd laughed nervously. Joy shook her head slightly. I'm just not interested in treating actors like victims. I never asked to be treated like a victim, Zac said. I said people are human. That line got one of the biggest applause breaks so far. Even some audience members stood briefly clapping before sitting again. Joy glanced toward the audience with visible irritation. Well, of course everybody loves the handsome movie star. A few uncomfortable laughs spread across the room. Zac smiled politely, but this time there was frustration underneath it. I don't think this conversation is really about me being a movie star. Oh, Joy asked. No, he replied. I think sometimes there's a tendency to reduce people to whatever version makes them easiest to criticize. The room became noticeably quieter. Sunny nodded slightly while listening. Joy tapped her cards on the desk. You think I'm criticizing you unfairly? I think you decided what kind of person I was before I sat down. The audience reacted instantly again. Whoopi looked over at Joy carefully. Joy laughed shortly. Trust me, if I had decided that, this interview would sound very different. That line got a mixed audience reaction. Zac nodded slowly. Maybe. For the first time since he walked out, his expression looked genuinely irritated. Whoopi sensed it too. All right, she said quickly. We're going to take a break before everybody starts charging appearance fees. The audience laughed loudly while the cameras pulled back slightly. But even as the applause started, viewers could still see Joy and Zac exchanging a few quiet words off mic while the rest of the panel shifted uncomfortably in their seats. And social media would soon start exploding over exactly what happened during those few seconds nobody at home could fully hear. The audience applause continued as the show returned from commercial, but the energy at the table felt noticeably different now. The smiles looked tighter. Even the camera cut between the hosts more carefully, almost like production already knew the interview had shifted into dangerous territory. Whoopi glanced toward Zac first. We are back with Zac Efron, and apparently everybody survived the commercial break. The audience laughed loudly. Zac smiled politely. Barely. That got another laugh, though Joy didn't react immediately. Whoopi tried steering things back toward safer territory. So let's talk about something lighter. Your fans online are obsessed with the fact that you disappear for long stretches between projects. People always think you quit Hollywood. Oh yeah, Zac said with a laugh. Every 6 months somebody thinks I moved to a cabin somewhere. Sunny smiled. Honestly, that sounds peaceful. It is peaceful, Zac replied. I think after working for a long time you start valuing normal life more. Joy jumped in almost instantly. But can celebrities actually live normal lives? The tone in her voice made the audience murmur again, because they could already feel where she was taking the conversation. Zac answered carefully. I think you can try. But do you? Joy pressed. Because every celebrity says they want privacy while posting professionally photographed vacations online. A few audience members laughed. Zac smiled slightly. I think there's a difference between sharing moments and inviting strangers into every part of your life. Joy leaned forward. But isn't fame built on attention? Partially, Zac admitted. So why complain about attention later? The audience reaction this time was quieter. Even viewers at home could sense the repetition now. Joy kept circling back to the same argument, and Zac was beginning to notice it too. I don't think setting boundaries is complaining, he replied. But celebrities profit from emotional connection, Joy continued. Fans buy tickets because they feel connected to people. That's true. So when celebrities suddenly say, "Leave me alone," people get confused. Zac paused before responding this time. I think fans deserve honesty, he said. But I also think there's become this culture where people expect unlimited access to human beings. The audience applauded. Joy immediately interrupted before the applause fully died down. You say human beings like you're separate from the system. Zac blinked slightly. I'm not separate from it. Well, you benefit from it. And media companies benefit from tearing people apart, he shot back calmly. The audience exploded again. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, laughing in disbelief. Okay, now everybody's awake. Joy gave a sarcastic smile. You think interviews like this tear people apart? I think media in general can, Zac answered. Absolutely. Even when criticism is deserved, criticism and cruelty aren't the same thing. That line got another huge reaction from the crowd. Sunny nodded. That's fair. Joy turned toward Sunny immediately. But criticism isn't automatically cruelty either. Of course not, Sunny replied carefully, clearly trying not to fully take sides. Joy looked back at Zac. See, this is the problem now. Everybody wants criticism softened. I never said soften, Zac replied. I said human. The audience clapped again. At this point, even Alyssa looked uncomfortable because the conversation had completely drifted away from the movie promotion. Whoopi tried redirecting again. So your movie? But Joy interrupted her this time. No, because I actually want to ask this, she said while turning back toward Zac. Do actors ever take responsibility for contributing to celebrity culture? The room got quiet. Zac looked genuinely confused for a second. What do you mean? I mean, the same celebrities who complain about pressure also participate in branding, image management, publicity campaigns. That's part of the job. Exactly. But participating in an industry doesn't mean every aspect of it is healthy. Joy laughed shortly. That sounds like something a publicist writes. The audience reacted loudly again. This time Zac didn't smile. No, he said calmly. That sounds like somebody speaking honestly. Joy shrugged. It sounds rehearsed. You keep saying that, because every answer sounds carefully designed. There was a noticeable silence at the table. Then Zac leaned slightly forward for the first time during the interview. Well, maybe I'm trying to stay respectful. The audience immediately reacted. Joy answered quickly. You think I'm disrespectful? I think sometimes you ask questions like you already dislike the answer before hearing it. The audience gasped loudly. Whoopi put both hands up. All right. Joy stared at him for a moment before laughing. That's called interviewing. No, Zac replied, still calm but firmer now. Sometimes it feels more like provoking. Several audience members clapped loudly. Joy shook her head. So now I'm provoking because I disagree with you? No, you're provoking because every answer gets dismissed the second I give it. The crowd reacted again. Even the camera briefly caught audience members whispering to each other. Whoopi looked toward production off camera for a second, clearly sensing things were getting harder to control. Joy folded her arms again. You came on a debate show, and I'm debating respectfully. That's subjective. Zac smiled slightly, but it looked frustrated now. You've called my answers rehearsed, polished, performative. Well, if the shoe fits, the audience immediately erupted. Several people shouted, oh. Sunny's eyes widened instantly. Whoopi leaned forward sharply. Joy. But Joy kept going. You're an actor. Your job is literally presentation. Zac stared at her for a second before answering. And your job is conversation. But this stopped feeling like one a while ago. The audience clapped loudly again. Even some of the hosts looked surprised by how direct he'd become. Joy gave a thin smile. You know what's interesting? The audience always sides with celebrities because they're charming. Zac nodded once. Maybe they side with people they feel are being treated unfairly. That line hit hard in the room. The applause was immediate and louder than before. Joy laughed again, but now it sounded irritated instead of playful. Oh, please. No, really, Zac continued. People can tell the difference between disagreement and trying to embarrass somebody. The audience practically exploded. Whoopi covered part of her face, trying not to react too strongly on camera. Sunny looked down at the table, smiling awkwardly. Joy leaned forward. Embarrass you? You think I'm trying to embarrass you? I think you wanted me defensive. And instead, Zac shrugged lightly. I stayed calm. That line completely changed the atmosphere. The audience erupted with loud applause and shocked reactions. Even Whoopi turned away laughing because she knew the moment had landed hard. Joy's expression stiffened immediately. Well, congratulations, she replied coldly. You stayed calm. The tension became thick enough that even the audience quieted afterward. Then Alyssa finally tried to redirect the conversation. You've talked before about taking breaks from Hollywood. Was that connected to burnout? Zac turned toward her gratefully. Yeah, honestly, burnout's real. Joy muttered quietly but still audible enough through her microphone. For millionaires too, apparently. The audience reacted instantly again. Whoopi turned toward Joy sharply. All right, but Zac heard it clearly. He looked directly at Joy for a second before responding. You know, this is exactly what I mean. Joy shrugged. What? The idea that money cancels out pressure or mental health or exhaustion. I didn't say cancels out. You implied it. I implied perspective matters. And empathy matters too. The audience applauded loudly once more. Joy shook her head again. Actors always want special treatment. No, Zac replied firmly now. We want basic humanity. Same as everybody else. That line brought another major applause break. At this point, the audience was overwhelmingly reacting in Zac's favor, and everyone at the table could feel it. Joy noticed too. You know what's funny? She said. The second somebody challenges a celebrity, suddenly they're the villain. Nobody said villain. Oh, social media will. Whoopi sighed dramatically. That part's definitely true. The audience laughed nervously. Joy looked toward the crowd. Tomorrow online it'll be Joy Behar attacks Zac Efron. A few audience members laughed awkwardly because even they knew that was probably exactly what would happen. Then Zac delivered the line that completely changed the mood in the studio. Well, people usually decide those things based on what they watched. The audience exploded louder than at any previous moment. Several people stood up clapping. Whoopi physically leaned away from the table, laughing in shock. Sunny covered her face again. And for the first time all interview, Joy Behar looked genuinely rattled on live television. The applause kept rolling through the studio even after the hosts tried moving forward. Some audience members were still clapping, while others exchanged stunned looks with the people sitting beside them. The atmosphere no longer felt like a celebrity interview. It felt like two people locked into a personal disagreement neither of them expected to have on live television. Whoopi finally shook her head and laughed. All right, everybody breathe. The audience laughed with her, though the tension never really disappeared. Joy Behar adjusted the papers in front of her and gave a short smile toward the crowd. Apparently I'm public enemy number one now. A few scattered laughs came from the audience, but not many. Zac Efron sat quietly for a moment, his expression calmer again, though viewers could still see frustration lingering underneath it. Whoopi turned toward him. You know what's funny? Most actors come out here and avoid conflict like it's a tax audit. The audience laughed loudly. Zac smiled. I wasn't trying to create conflict. Joy immediately jumped in. No, you just implied I don't have empathy. That's not what I said. You heavily suggested it. I said conversations can become dismissive. And I'm part of those conversations. There was another awkward pause. Zac nodded slowly. Sometimes, yes. The audience reacted again with loud murmurs. Sunny leaned in carefully. I think what Zac is saying is that public figures get discussed like they stop being people. Joy turned toward Sunny immediately. But he chose public life. And, Sunny replied, and accountability comes with that. Zac finally spoke again. Nobody's arguing against accountability. Then what are you arguing against? Joy asked. The assumption that criticism has no effect on people. Joy leaned back in her chair. People criticize politicians, teachers, nurses, journalists. And all of them deserve humanity too, Zac interrupted calmly. The audience applauded instantly. Joy looked visibly irritated that the audience kept reacting so strongly to his responses. You keep framing this like I attacked you personally. Zac hesitated for a second. I think the conversation became personal pretty quickly. Oh, come on. No, really, he continued. The interview started with assumptions about who I am, whether I'm fake, whether my answers are real. Joy gave a sarcastic laugh. You are an actor, and you keep using that like it disqualifies sincerity. The audience erupted again. Whoopi shook her head slowly. This is becoming Thanksgiving dinner. The crowd laughed loudly. Joy pointed lightly toward Zac. You know what your problem is? Whoopi instantly reacted. Oh! The audience laughed nervously. Zac stayed calm. What's my problem? You're very good at sounding reasonable while subtly insulting people. The crowd let out a loud collective reaction. Zac blinked, almost surprised. I'm not trying to insult you. But you are. I'm responding. To everything. Because every answer becomes another accusation. The audience applauded again. Joy crossed her arms tighter. Maybe because your answers avoid responsibility. Zac frowned slightly. Responsibility for what exactly? For participating in the celebrity machine while pretending to stand outside it. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing? I'm saying human beings can participate in systems and still criticize unhealthy parts of them. The audience clapped loudly again. Whoopi looked toward the audience. Y'all came ready today. The crowd laughed. But Joy wasn't laughing anymore. You know what bothers me? She asked. This modern celebrity culture where every wealthy famous person suddenly becomes a mental health spokesperson. The audience reaction became mixed instantly. Some clapped. Others groaned. Zac answered carefully. Talking openly about pressure isn't pretending to be a spokesperson. But it becomes trendy. No, Zac replied firmly. Ignoring mental health for decades was the trend. That line hit hard. The audience applauded loudly and continuously. Joy shook her head. You see? That right there. Everything becomes morally framed. What does that mean? It means if somebody disagrees with you, suddenly they lack compassion. I never said that. You keep implying it. Zac exhaled slowly for the first time, looking genuinely tired. I think maybe you're hearing attacks where I'm trying to explain perspective. Joy laughed sharply. That's rich. The audience immediately reacted again. Whoopi stepped in quickly. Okay. But Joy kept talking. No, seriously. You've spent this entire interview subtly painting me as cruel. Zac looked stunned for a second. I never called you cruel. You didn't have to. That's not fair. Oh, now fairness matters? The audience gasped loudly. Even Sunny looked shocked at how sharp the exchange had become. Zac stared at Joy for a second before speaking again. I came here to talk about work. And we are talking. No, he replied calmly. We stopped talking a while ago. That line brought another huge audience reaction. Whoopi leaned back again, laughing in disbelief. Lord have mercy. Joy tapped the table with her fingers. You really think you handled this perfectly, huh? I don't think anybody handles conflict perfectly. Yet somehow you always sound like the mature one. I'm trying to stay respectful. There you go again. What? That tone? The audience murmured in confusion. What tone? Zac asked honestly. The calm, superior tone. The crowd reacted loudly again. Zac looked genuinely surprised this time. I'm calm because yelling wouldn't help. Joy smiled sarcastically. Very noble. Why are you angry that I'm calm? The audience exploded instantly. Several people shouted out loud in shock. Whoopi nearly spit out her drink laughing. Sunny leaned back, covering her face again. Even Alyssa looked stunned, because the question landed harder than anyone expected. Joy's expression tightened immediately. I'm not angry. You seem frustrated. Because you're being condescending. I'm really not trying to. But you are. Zac paused before responding more quietly. I think maybe you decided I was fake before I even sat down. The room went almost silent. That line felt different from the earlier exchanges. Less sarcastic. More honest. Joy looked at him for a moment before answering. You know what? Maybe I'm tired of celebrities pretending they're regular people while living completely different realities. Zac nodded slowly. That's fair. The audience became quieter because they weren't expecting him to agree. But different realities don't remove emotions, he continued. Money doesn't erase anxiety. Fame doesn't erase insecurity. Joy shrugged. It helps. Sometimes. Sometimes it makes things worse. Oh, please. No, really, Zac said. Imagine millions of strangers deciding who you are every day. Joy laughed. Welcome to television. That response immediately changed the audience mood again. Because for the first time, viewers could see Zac getting visibly frustrated. Exactly, he replied. So then why dismiss it? I'm not dismissing it. You literally mocked burnout 2 minutes ago. The audience gasped again. Joy immediately answered back. Because perspective matters. And empathy matters. There's your favorite word again. Because it matters. The applause returned again, louder than before. At this point, even Whoopi looked exhausted, trying to manage the energy at the table. "Can I just say something?" she interrupted firmly. Both Zac and Joy stopped talking. Whoopi looked between them. "This conversation is actually bigger than both of you." The audience quieted immediately. "People are exhausted," Whoopi continued. "Regular people are stressed. Famous people are stressed. Everybody's stressed. And now nobody wants to hear anybody else complain." A wave of applause spread. Through the crowd, Whoopi pointed toward Zac. "He's saying fame is pressure." Then toward Joy. "And she's saying regular people have pressure too." The audience applauded again. For a second, it finally looked like the tension might calm down. Then Joy quietly added one sentence that instantly reignited everything. "Yeah, but regular people don't have teams protecting their image every second." The audience reacted loudly again. Zac gave a small laugh in disbelief. "There it is." "There what is?" Joy asked. "The assumption that everything I say is manufactured." "Well, isn't it?" "No. You're telling me nobody coached you before this interview?" "Not to survive this interview, no." The audience exploded. Whoopi threw her hands in the air, laughing while the crowd roared. Even Sunny had tears in her eyes from laughing at the sudden sharpness of the comeback. Joy stared at Zac, completely stunned for a second. And for the first time, the audience could visibly see members of the production crew moving nervously just off camera, while the segment continued spiraling further out of control live on air. By the time the interview reached its final segment, the energy inside the studio had completely changed from the light celebrity atmosphere the producers originally expected. The audience was no longer simply reacting to funny stories or movie promotion. Every comment now felt loaded. Every pause felt uncomfortable. Even the hosts seemed unsure about how to land the conversation without making things worse. When the cameras returned from the final commercial break, the applause sounded louder but more nervous than before. Whoopi smiled tightly toward the audience. "We are still here with Zac Efron." The crowd applauded loudly again, with several people cheering his name. Then the camera briefly cut toward Joy Behar, who smiled politely but noticeably less relaxed than earlier in the show. Whoopi tried one last time to lighten the atmosphere. "You know, this might be the most stressful interview we've had all season." The audience burst into laughter. Zac smiled politely. "Honestly, I thought we'd just talk about the movie." That line alone triggered another wave of audience laughter and applause because everybody knew it was true. Joy responded immediately. "And somehow I became the villain of the internet before the episode even finished airing." A few audience members laughed awkwardly. Zac shook his head slightly. "I never wanted that." "But you knew what you were doing," Joy replied. The audience reacted again. Zac looked surprised. "What does that mean?" "You're smart," she said. "You know how audiences react. You know how social media clips work." The room became quiet again. Zac answered carefully. "So because people agreed with me, that means I manipulated them? I'm saying celebrities understand public sympathy very well. And television hosts understand public confrontation very well." The audience exploded loudly one more time. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, laughing with disbelief. "This man came prepared today." Sunny shook her head, smiling. "No, I think he came unprepared and survived." The crowd laughed hard at that. Even Zac laughed genuinely for the first time in a while. Joy finally smiled slightly too, though the tension still remained underneath everything. Then Alyssa stepped in with a calmer question. "Can I ask something honestly?" she said while turning toward Zac. "When interviews go like this, does it affect you afterward?" The audience quieted immediately. This time Zac paused much longer before answering. "Yeah," he admitted quietly. "Of course it does." The room stayed silent. "I think people imagine celebrities leave interviews and instantly forget everything because we're used to cameras," he continued. "But awkward moments still stay with you. Public criticism still stays with you." The audience listened carefully now. "And honestly," he added, "sometimes people online forget there's a human being sitting here while they're turning moments into entertainment." That line got strong applause again, though softer and more thoughtful this time. Joy leaned back, listening quietly. Zac continued. "I knew this interview would trend. I knew clips would spread. But there's a difference between disagreement and trying to reduce somebody into a headline." The audience applauded again. Whoopi nodded slowly. "That part is true." Then, unexpectedly, Joy spoke more calmly than she had the entire interview. "Well, let me say this then. The audience quieted instantly. "I challenge people because that's my job," she said. "I've done television a long time. Sometimes audiences like it, sometimes they hate it. But I don't wake up trying to hurt people." The atmosphere softened slightly. Zac nodded. "I believe that." Joy looked at him carefully for a moment. "But I also think celebrities sometimes expect softer treatment than everyone else. And I think sometimes public figures get dehumanized faster than people realize," Zac replied. This time the disagreement sounded calmer. Less personal. More honest. Sunny smiled slightly. "See, that's an actual conversation." The audience applauded warmly. Whoopi pointed toward Sunny. "Took us 45 minutes to get there." The crowd laughed loudly. For the first time since the interview began, the tension genuinely seemed to ease. But then Joy added one final comment that instantly reignited social media all over again. "You do have to admit, though," she said while looking at Zac, "being handsome helps people forgive you very quickly." The audience exploded with reactions. Some laughed loudly while others groaned. Zac laughed too, shaking his head. "I don't even know how to respond to that." Whoopi immediately jumped in. "Don't. We're ending the show before another headline happens." The audience roared with laughter and applause. As the segment wrapped, the cameras pulled back and the hosts thanked Zac for appearing on the show. But viewers immediately noticed something unusual compared to normal celebrity interviews. The goodbye felt awkward. Not hostile exactly, but cautious. Zac shook hands with the hosts politely. He smiled toward the audience and waved before walking off stage. But cameras briefly caught Joy saying something quietly to Whoopi, while producers hurried around behind the scenes preparing for the next segment. And, within minutes of the broadcast ending, social media exploded. Clips of the interview spread across platforms almost instantly. Zac Efron destroys Joy Behar. Most uncomfortable view interview this year. Zac stayed calmer than I would have. Joy was too aggressive. The audience completely turned on Joy. Those were the kinds of comments flooding online. At the same time, other viewers defended Joy. She asked real questions. Celebrities hate being challenged. Joy wasn't wrong. People only sided with Zac because he stayed calm. By that evening, hashtags connected to both Zac and Joy were trending. Short clips from the interview gained millions of views within hours, especially the moment Zac said, "People usually decide those things based on what they watched." And another clip spread even faster when he responded, "Not to survive this interview, no." Viewers debated the exchange nonstop online. Some people praised Zac for staying composed under pressure. Others argued Joy was simply doing her job as a talk show host and refusing to give him an easy celebrity interview. Media outlets started publishing articles breaking down body language, audience reactions, and whether the interview crossed the line from debate into personal confrontation. The next morning, entertainment shows were already replaying the clips repeatedly. Even former talk show guests began weighing in online. Some defended tough interviews. Others said daytime television increasingly rewards conflict over conversation. Meanwhile, insiders reportedly claimed producers backstage were shocked by how intense the interview became live on air. According to audience members posting online afterward, the atmosphere inside the studio reportedly felt even more uncomfortable during commercial breaks because neither Zac nor Joy spoke very much off camera once the tension escalated. One audience member wrote, "It felt like everyone realized halfway through that this wasn't normal celebrity promo anymore." Another posted, "Whoopi was trying so hard to keep the peace." And maybe the most repeated reaction online was simple. Zac embarrassed Joy without ever raising his voice. Still, despite all the online drama, neither Zac nor Joy publicly attacked each other after the show ended. No angry statements. No public insults. Just endless debate from viewers trying to decide who handled the situation better. And honestly, that may be the biggest reason the interview spread so quickly online. Because it didn't feel scripted. It felt messy, tense, emotional, uncomfortable, and real. Exactly the kind of live television moment audiences can't stop talking about once it happens. Now we want to hear from you. Who do you think handled the interview better, Zac Efron or Joy Behar? Did Joy go too far, or was she simply asking tough questions? And did Zac stay respectful, or was he quietly turning the audience against her the entire time? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.